Welcome, friends! Here's an example of a very hard sentence equivalence question for your practicing pleasure. Take a moment, consider what the sentence is attempting to communicate, and then choose the two answers that you feel create equivalent sentences. And remember, sentence equivalences require two and only two answers. Once you've locked in your answers, unpause the video and we will get to the correct answer together. A good first step for sentence equivalences is to identify who or what the sentence is describing, and then what other information the sentence provides about the subject. So we're basically looking for the who or the what, and we find it right in the middle of the sentence. The Environmental Management Bureau. Now, what else do we know about it? Well, we know at one time it was versatile. At one time is a time shift, which indicates that it was versatile in the past, but that's likely no longer the case. Then we have a non-essential phrase between two commas that's basically describing a characteristic that made it versatile. It's an example of fluff that we can cut from the sentence. It's a distractor, we don't need to pay attention to it. But there is more relevant information for our subject following where it is mentioned in the sentence. The Bureau has long since become blank and largely unresponsive to even its own internal needs. I want to point out something that's really helpful about the structure of this sentence equivalence. You should remember this structure in the future because when you encounter it, there is a great strategy that you can use to help streamline the process of coming up with your own word. When the blank comes before the coordinating conjunction and when what follows that coordinating conjunction is an adjective or adjectival phrase, you know that the correct word for the blank will be incredibly similar to the word or words that follow and. So let's focus in on that part of the sentence, the part with the blank, just to see how helpful this technique is. Because and largely unresponsive follows the blank, we can take a lot of the guesswork out of coming up with our own word by simply plugging largely unresponsive back into the blank. The correct answers to this sentence equivalence will be similar in meaning to largely unresponsive. We've used the structure of the sentence and the clues built into that structure to make our prediction for us. With that in mind, let's go back to the full question. We're looking for answer choices that convey a similar meaning to largely unresponsive. Now, at this point, or maybe before this point, you probably looked down at these answer choices and thought something like, what even are these answer choices? What in the world am I supposed to do with this? Because yeah, a lot of these are crazy high-level vocabulary, and that is really the main reason that this sentence is considered very difficult. The structure of this sentence isn't too terribly awful to get through, but these words in the answer choices are pretty terrible. When you're faced with unfamiliar vocabulary, do your best to rely on the power of the process of elimination. Look for something that's somewhat familiar. D and E are a bit more commonly used than the rest of the answer choices and can be eliminated since they do not remotely mean largely unresponsive. Invigorated means to give strength or energy to, and compromise is to reach an agreement largely through making concessions. Those two can go. We're left with far less commonly used vocabulary words. If none of these ring a bell, start thinking about other process of elimination tools. Word roots might come to mind. Notice that answer A has the prefix ante. Ante means before. In the case of this word, we have a prefix that means before, followed by dated, and that tracks since antedated means to precede or to come before in terms of a timeline. So even if we weren't super familiar with antedated, we might be able to use word roots to determine that it's not like largely unresponsive, and therefore should be eliminated. We have to eliminate one more, and these are really tough. Maybe you happen to recall encountering ossified in a science class or pilloried in a literature class. Remembering the context you've heard these words in can be helpful, even if it's only to help determine whether they have a positive or negative connotation. If you're truly just making a guess at this point, that's totally fine. Make that guess quickly and move on to the next question. Timing, of course, is always of the essence on this test. In this case, let's say you happen to recall that pilloried is when someone is publicly attacked for something that they've done. It's often associated with politicians and other public figures, and being publicly attacked for your behavior is certainly nothing like largely unresponsive, so that eliminates answer B. And that leaves C and F as our correct answers. Sclerotic means becoming rigid and unresponsive. Ossified means having become rigid or fixed in attitude or position. These are the two words that are in fact the closest in meaning to largely unresponsive. Now, even if you did not know these two words, you might still be able to get the correct answers by eliminating the other options, and that is a perfectly viable way to work through sentence equivalence questions. Thank you for working through this one, and keep coming back for more tips, tricks, and practice from the team here at Magoosh.